What's happening, everybody? I feel like this is moving slow. Hopefully not. I don't think I have too many. I don't think I have too many programs up. I guess I totally could. Hopefully this is slow. But hope everybody's doing well. It's not exactly the new year anymore, but if hopefully the new year's treating you well. And welcome to Facemask Fantasy off-season version. Still figuring out the cadence of the offseason now that John is still kind of going through an indefinite absence. He's working on it's health focused, trying to get his back right and everything. But definitely available on Thursdays. It could be, if there's enough demand and interest, we can definitely add a second stream during the week as well. I know that there's not as much of a following for Dynasty yet. It's much more redraft centric and redraft focused what we do, or as far as what our audience likes. But I know that there's Dynasty interest out there. So if there's intrigue, we can definitely add more streams during the week. And then, of course, the NFL playoffs are going on. I know it's cliche at this point, but considered by many to be the best weekend in football as far as a football quality perspective, plus still the amount of volume that you get as far as games throughout the days. The divisional round of the playoffs, final 8 teams vying for the Super Bowl. So figure we could do a preview of those games. And then, of course, in between dynasty conversations, any playoff contests that you may do, any fantasy related contests that you do, whether it's best ball, whether it's DFS, whatever have you. We can talk about that as well. And then, of course, anything that's on the table from a dynasty perspective. If you have a dynasty league, if you have questions about that, hopefully, if you're in a dynasty league, it remains active. People still are responsive and talking shop with trades for anybody who's reaching out. So we can talk shop there as well. And then as far as the channel goes, the videos are returning. The recorded videos took a bit of a break toward the end of the season. Unfortunately, there were some unforeseen developments. It's known by some of you guys by now. But we had a bit of difficulty, admittedly, keeping up with the pace that we had in previous seasons as far as content between new jobs. And of course, John was having his back troubles that were causing him some issues and some problems. So combination of things, but they are returning. Got something out today. Very, very early, very quick, but also very obvious just about Bijan Robinson. You already know he's the Dynasty 101 this year. There's not too much debate around it. Squashed any attempt at doing so pretty much in the video. There's only like one very specific situation you'd have to be in to consider passing on him in dynasty leagues. And even if you're in that situation, it's like, why just take the best player? But those will be returning on a regular basis. Certainly keep an eye out for that content that I am looking forward to getting back to doing and providing now that I've got my personal schedules a little bit more balanced and under my control. See how long that lasts. For the divisional round this weekend, we got the Chiefs and the Jaguars and the Eagles and the Giants NFC East matchup on Saturday. And then Sunday, matchups might be more intriguing on Sunday. The Bills and the Bengals face off in the early game. It's not exactly early. It's at 3:00 Eastern, but it's the first game. And then the 49ers and the Cowboys at 6:30 on Sunday, so all Eastern times. Obviously, the Bills and the Bengals, Bit of an unwritten story there with the Week 17 cancellation due to the Damar Hamlin injury. So, very excited to see how that one goes. A lot of playoff best ball challenges or competitions or tournaments are certainly leaning on players from both of those teams, maybe more so than any other matchup. You drafted your Chiefs and your Eagles in those playoff contests because they were the idea of the playoff long contest, of course, is you're trying to maximize the number of games that the players you draft could potentially play. So you're trying to pick team or players on teams that you think are likely to make a run. Of course, team players on the teams that earn the bye week, the top seed, are going to be more appealing because they've got one less game to play, but it comes at the expense of not being available to you the first round. So you still need to advance and to be able to reap the benefits of drafting Chiefs and Eagles players. So how do you buoy that? Well, players on teams like the Bills and the Bengals help to get there, and now they're facing off. So a lot of playoff contests will hinge on that game, probably more so than any other matchup. You know, the Chiefs faced the Jaguars. There were only so many. There's going to be more parity on those teams as far as the amount of Jags players drafted versus the number of Bills players or Bengals players. Um, and then same can be said for the Giants. I advanced an entry in playoff best ball, and there's several teams with Vikings players on them. It's just people taking a shot on certain players on certain teams. It's not exactly you're predicting who you're going to win. It's just who do you think has the better chance to with a combination of value and potential production. Um, so Bills Bengals probably has the most volume as far as fantasy this weekend. Um, and then same can be said. I mean, same can be said for the Cowboys. Lots of people were drafting Cowboys, but going into the week, it looks kind of silly now, or in hindsight. But there were plenty of people taking Bucks players in hopes of your typical annual Tom Brady playoff run. It just was never in the cards, as it turns out. That it was a good reminder of how the mighty have fallen in Tampa Bay. That Bucks roster is not anywhere close to as good as it was a couple of years ago. It got older. It got injured. The offensive line. Although Ryan Jensen did return for that game, but anyway, I digress. The Bucks weren't the same, and the Cowboys were quick to remind us of that. So lots of people probably relying on Dallas in these playoff best balls. What's going on, CXK? Good to see you. Just a reminder, like anything's on the table as always. AMA, divisional round discussion, and of course, if you're playing in any playoff contests, we can obviously dip our toes in that from a DFS perspective. It's fun to keep the grind going during the playoffs. Just because the regular season is over doesn't mean your fantasy fun on a weekly basis has to end. At least not yet. So for the Chiefs and the Jaguars, this one obviously looks like the closest thing to a sure thing, and the markets and the bettors, based on where the money is going, will tell you the same thing. The Chiefs are a significant favorite over the Jacksonville Jaguars, who needed a combination of a miracle second half and a complete meltdown from the Chargers to advance, but they got it. Both things happened. Credit to Trevor Lawrence overcoming. That might have been the worst half of his NFL, or of his, not just his NFL career, but his just football life. I can't imagine too many opponents in high school or college forced Trevor Lawrence into a 4 interception half, but he overcame it. brought them back, got the win. Now he gets to go on the road. Him and Jacksonville get to play with house money in Kansas City. That's gonna be where it ends, though. So if you did get Chiefs players in playoff best ball, you're feeling much better, I would say, than if the Chargers had advanced, because that's a division opponent. Division games are weird. Division games are weird, right? We know this. Doesn't matter if it's the playoffs or not. We saw the Bills struggle to put the Dolphins away with their third string quarterback. We saw a close game between AFC North opponents on Sunday Night Football. The Bengals needing, worked out. They made the play, but getting a fumble on their own goal line and being able to run it back for 6 was what able to seal the deal. But that game was close, even though the Ravens were playing a backup quarterback against a lethal Joe Burrow-led offense for Cincinnati. Division games are weird. So if you have Chiefs, if you're the Chiefs, one of your Chiefs fans, and two, if you have Chiefs players in your fantasy best ball playoff contest, you're feeling much better, because the Chargers played well against the Chiefs in the regular season and would have likely given the Chiefs a little bit more of a run for their money, but they didn't earn the right to play in the game. They epically collapsed instead. That being said, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce are going to be chalky in a lot of DFS lineups this week. And again, if you have best ball for the playoffs, you're feeling real good about the Chiefs. They should do fine against Jacksonville. I'd be curious to know what Travis Etienne's price is in DFS, because it's not a great matchup by the numbers. But you have to imagine in this matchup, Andy Reid will do what he can to reduce Trevor Lawrence's, or at least and the coaching staff, the Chiefs coaching staff, will prioritize limiting Trevor Lawrence through the air. It's likely that I would think that they would give the Jags what they want on the ground and just not let them beat them through the air. So Etienne is an interesting spot here. I think he's going to get a lot of work as one of the better players in a must-win. Obviously, it's a win or go home for Jacksonville for both teams, but I mean, I got to think Etienne's going to get a few extra looks, a few extra snaps with Jacksonville's season on the line. And again, the Chiefs could just decide to give Jacksonville what they want on the ground. And again, they'll live with that, with the ball out of Trevor Lawrence's hands, So I have a sneaky suspicion that Etienne could be good for DFS this week. Mike, what's going on? Good to see you. And again, I have no cadence when it comes to these types of things. I can break up the conversation with questions. Not a problem, as long as it's not for you guys. But CXK has got a question about a Dynasty Superflex League. Should you trade away the 102, the 112, and James Cook for the 101? My first question is, who are your quarterbacks, CXK? As long as they're viable, then sure. You're talking about a guy who should be a star. Bijan is the most highly touted running back prospect to come out since Saquon Barkley. It might feel like a lot of draft capital, but if you're stout at quarterback, like if you have at least one star or a couple of good young players at the position, and you don't need to, for the sake of being strong at the most important position, feel like you need to take Bryce Young at 102 or CJ Stroud at 102. If you feel like you don't need those quarterbacks, then sure, make the move. Because Bijan instantly gives you a cornerstone player to build around. immediately before even knowing his landing spot. What's up, Broho? Good to see you, man. Um, so if you've got good quarterbacks, sure, make the deal. Because there are going to be, unlike last year, as it pertains to the quarterbacks, unlike last year, there's going to be more than one guy worth drafting in the first round of your rookie draft. There's going to be more than one quarterback available, or there's going to be more than one quarterback worth drafting in the first round. Last year, it was just Pickett. This year, there, depending on how the draft goes, there could be 5 guys worth drafting in the first round of the rookie draft. But if you don't need a quarterback in this class, like there's lots of talent in this class from a quarterback perspective, but all of the prospects, like most prospects, come with their pros and cons, their green flags and their concerns. Bijan does not have a red flag to speak of. And that's what makes him a cornerstone player that you can likely build your team around. And you have Watson, Lawrence, Pickett, and Lance. Well, that's not bad. I mean, so you have 3 guaranteed starters for next year. Lance, we'll see. Which, by the way, everyone's chirping about Trey Lance on Twitter about whether you should, whether you should buy low. To that point, there's no sell high window for Lance, so don't get duped into a buy low offer for Lance just because it's possible that he's looking for. I don't know what's going to happen with the quarterback situation in San Francisco. I don't, Brock Purdy looked spectacular against Seattle, but he certainly missed a few throws. And I know that's like nitpicky, but that 49ers team is so loaded. They're loaded on offense and defense. They've got high-end, top talent in the league skill position players at their respective positions. Like, I'm not ready to say that they're not just propping Brock Purdy up. I would think Trey Lance is going to have, at the very least, a chance to compete for the starting job next year for the 49ers and should have the inside track for the job based on the draft capital. We didn't get everyone, the recency bias on Trey Lance is that, he actually stinks. He's actually not good. Well, we didn't see him. He was terrible week 1 in a rainstorm, right? Against the Bears. He was terrible in some of the worst conditions that anybody had to play in this year, right off the bat, on a field that is notorious for players getting injured on in Chicago. And then he slowly started to look a little bit better week 2 in a very small sample size before he actually got hurt. And that was we have to remember, before George Kittle came back. So, anyway, my Trey Lance diatribe is do not sell low on Trey Lance. If you don't want to buy low, that's fine. But if you already have him, then you should certainly not, don't move on from him. Not now. But anyway, so you have at least 3 guys who are your are starters you can lean on going into the 2023 season. The jury's out if any one of them can be a top 6 option. Watson has been. He started to look a little bit better as the season moved on. So you hope it's him, and then you hope Lawrence can take a step forward. If if you feel like you've got if Bijan is coming in, if you draft CXK, if you draft Bijan as your 101 and he's your RB3, um, as in to say to that, you have, high end other options at running back, you've got decent options at quarterback, and you're looking to go for it. You're like, okay, now I can compete, I can contend. Then sure, make the trade. Even if it's even if your running back situation is weak and you just feel like the rest of your team is strong, as long as you don't have to give up a running or one of the quarterbacks, then yeah, go for it. Go for it. Yeah. Any dynasty questions can be on the table. We can also talk, of course, about the divisional round for anybody who's just jumping in. Um, you looking at Chase Brown, Rojo? First of all, thanks for you don't have to stop your film study, but always appreciate coming in and hanging out. Um, yeah, Brown's an interesting player. You're uh, talking later in rookie drafts, but interesting. As far as the top options at quarterback for me, if I'm not in the top 3 picks, right? Cuz that's likely what you're looking at in dynasty rookie drafts. You're likely looking at again, it depends on need. You could see Gibbs squeak in there even in super flex leagues if somebody feels like they're set at quarterback. But if it goes, all right, we'll just say if you don't have a top 4 pick and you know you're not getting Young or Stroud, uh, I love the idea of Anthony Richardson and where he potentially lands. And if you can get him around like the 109 or the 110, that's awfully interesting to me. That's awfully interesting to me. That's the one I'm personally like. That's the scenario I would be interested in. If you have a top 4 pick and you could use a quarterback, um, Young or Stroud, you have to go that way. But and he could climb again. It's depending on it all depends on what are GMs and coaches thinking right now. If Anthony Richardson goes in the first round and doesn't and goes relatively high, he's probably not lasting to the 109 or the 110. You know, could go a little higher. Could go a little higher. Bijan and Gibbs, though, yeah, they both look really good. They both look like they're going to be good. We can talk dynasty. It's AMA. It's always AMA. These live streams are always going to be AMA. If you guys have a topic that you want to talk shop on, y'all know I'll veer off course so quickly. It doesn't matter. We can talk shop on dynasty stuff. Um, Figured that if anybody is playing DFS though, if you're like me and you are still playing fantasy playoff contests, whether it's best ball or DFS or the thing I love this time of year is when I start looking at like player props. I like doing the player props. So we can also do that. We can look at those. It is all on the table. There's no such thing with Facemask as getting off track because we just keep these all open ended. Y'all know we don't really follow much of a script. I have ideas of what we'll talk about today, but it never has to like remain that way. Anything's on the table. What's going on, Crumply Heads? Good to see you. Did you make that Tony Pollard trade? And yeah, 6K, there will be live streams throughout the offseason. There will be live streams throughout the offseason. Um, I'm getting videos out again, or I'm in the process of getting videos out again. So we're not going anywhere. Still waiting on news from John as far as his surgery. It sounds like it's been delayed and pushed back, but it's been kind of it's been a little quiet. I know he's still patiently waiting. So um still not sure how long we'll be without him for, but I'm holding down the fort. We will be here during the off season to talk shop. Everything's on the table. You guys already know. Dynasty, especially after the Super Bowl, especially after the season ends in totality and everything shifts toward the draft, the dynasty coverage ramps up. We'll be here. We'll be here all off season. We'll be here all off season. It'll probably be once a week for now, and then again once we get closer to as we get closer to the draft, maybe toward the combine, then the shows ramp up maybe to a couple times a week. But we'll be here. We'll be here. So yeah, Rojo, appreciate you, bro. You already know. And I still owe you some merch. So shoot me a note on Sleeper whenever you want on what it is that you want and how I can get it to you, and consider it done. Yeah, Anthony Richardson's really interesting. I don't know that the jury's out on how he develops as an NFL talent, but from a pure fantasy perspective, he is enticing. I hope he's got the intangibles. I hope he lands somewhere where his ceiling gets maximized. He absolutely has QB1 upside for this class. Right now, again, top 4. If you prefer Richardson and need a quarterback, you could look to trade down to still get Richardson and pick up an asset, pick up another piece. You could do that. That would also work. Yeah. And yes, for anybody who does play on Sleeper, appreciate it, Rojo. Yeah, the rookies are now in there. So you can start their ADP is not in there yet. But I just don't know if there's enough data yet. That's what it goes off of. They just take the ADP of all of the drafts that have been accumulated. Let me see if they do have ADPs for the rookies yet, but they are added on Sleeper. Yeah. While I'm doing this, yeah, just final thoughts, I guess, on the Chiefs and the Jaguars. I'm definitely intrigued by Travis Etienne's props this weekend. I think that I think the Chiefs' game plan on defense will be, sure, Trevor Lawrence, hand the ball off to Travis Etienne. We'll roll the dice with the ball not in your hands. Then I think that's how they'll look to play it. So it's not a great matchup by the numbers for Etienne, but I think he might get a little extra usage this weekend. something that the Chiefs will try to scheme the Jags into, and something that they will be more than okay with, because that means that the ball's not in Trevor Lawrence's hands. So I like ETN's props this weekend. Mahomes, it's a pretty good matchup for Mahomes. The concerns of like, oh, I don't know if he's going to have to do that much are not like the concern is less of that is less severe in the playoffs, because teams are going to keep their foot on the gas longer in playoff games to put their opponents away, to assure the win in as much totality as they possibly can. So honestly, it's going to be chalky. And actually, Josh Allen's probably going to be a little bit more expensive than Mahomes. But if I'm playing DFS, Mahomes is probably the guy I want at quarterback. It's not unrealistic to expect a 4-touchdown performance at home. Teams keep their foot on the gas in the playoffs. So Kelsey should get his. Mecole Hardman is out. That might bump Juju Smith-Schuster's DFS price up a little bit. But again, in the playoffs, it's more likely quarterbacks are going to lean on guys that they consider their top options. I got to think Juju gets some extra looks this weekend. Not as many as Kelsey, obviously. Kelsey's the number one option, but Kelsey, Juju, Jerick McKinnon, all big-time players this weekend. And then just from the perspective of if you think the Jags are going to be trailing, again, even if they're not, they can't afford to rest on their laurels. They could have a 2-touchdown lead. That's not anything against Mahomes at home if it's early. So Lawrence's, I think his passing yardage prop is like 249.5. That feels like a pretty safe bet. But the market likes Kansas City. Bettors like Kansas City. I have no reason to believe Kansas City doesn't win this game by 10 points. Hell of a run by Jacksonville to turn it around, clinch the division, and win a game in the playoffs. This is probably where it comes to an end, though. And yeah, we can talk about the Eagles and the Giants, or specifically the Giants turnaround. As far as Daniel Jones, yeah, I mean, you got to pay him now. The Giants have to pay him now. What choice do they have? He's playing incredibly well, not just at the moment. He's played well all season. What do you have? 5 interceptions this year after consistently. He was always one of the safer bets to lead the league in turnovers. That didn't happen this year. Turned it around, played well with what's well known at this point as a less than stellar wide receiving core. You know, they lost Sterling Shepard. They traded Kadarius Toney. I mean, they're down to Richie James. Wan'Dale Robinson's out for the season. I mean, they're down to Richie James and Isaiah Hodgins. Darius Slayton is still there, but Darius Slayton is a former 6th-round pick. Like, it's an impressive thing that Daniel Jones is doing. And yeah, Brian Daboll is a good example of coaching matters. Who you have in there as your head coach matters. Because they got to be good at either two things. They have to be good at they got to be good on a personal level with their players, or they just have to know exactly how to maximize the skill set of each individual that he coaches and puts everybody in a position where they're trusting him because they're playing well, where they previously weren't. And Daniel Jones is the poster child of that. They have to pay him. You can't, this is any franchise, you can't sell to the team, not just the fans, you can't sell to the team like, oh, this was a great year. We had fun. It was a great ride. We made the playoffs for the first time in the Giants 6 years? More? 6 or 7 years. The Giants had been on a drought. Now they're back and they won a game on the road, and they're playing with house money in the divisional round. You can't let the quarterback who played well and helped get you to this spot walk and say, well, we're going to do this again with a quarterback on a rookie deal that we take in this year's draft. Like, you can't. Yeah, they have to pay Daniel Jones. They have to pay Daniel Jones. They can't run the risk of letting him walk and then hoping that they get a quarterback in the draft. Their pick is going to be 25 or higher. There's no guarantee a quarterback worth taking in the first round lasts that long. It's probably not going to happen. We all know how teams get enamored with quarterbacks. And we know Young and Stroud are going to be gone probably in the top 5. Top 4 is more realistic now because Indianapolis picks 4th and they need a quarterback. 2 of the top 5 prospects, or let's say top 4 prospects, right? Richardson and Levis rounding it out, being the other 2. Yeah, the Giants have to pay Daniel Jones. They have to. And he's probably looking at $100 million. Plus, that's the benchmark. Daniel Jones has earned that fat contract. You could franchise tag him, but we all know the history of the franchise tag and how it can leave players disgruntled. Now, as the quarterback, Daniel Jones is in a trickier spot there. It's not like he can. I mean, he technically can, but like it wouldn't be a great look if he held out of training camp as a result of being slapped with the franchise tag, which is something we've seen in the past at length. So the Giants have to be careful here. They can use the franchise tag, but Jones is absolutely going to come to the table and say, I earned that contract. Now the time has come. You were wrong to decline the 5th-year option. Now pay up. Now pay up. They have to sign him. He played very well this year. Played very well this year. And was great against Minnesota. It's not a good defense in Minnesota. The Vikings do not have a good defense, but still got to go out there on the road. You can call it a hostile environment, but I don't know. Maybe it's loud just because it's a dome. They went out there and got it done on the road. Impressive win in the playoffs against a team with a lot of playoff experience, the Vikings. Or Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen. The defensive guys that have been there for years. There's a strong amount of playoff experience for the Vikings. The Giants had none. Went in there on the road, handled their business. You have to, with quarterbacks, you have to. That's the going rate. If you find one that you feel like is worth paying, we don't see these contracts anymore for quarterbacks where it's like 4 years, $50 million, where 30 of that is guaranteed and there's an out in there somewhere, maybe after the second year, where the team can cut the player with a minimal cap hit. Like, those transactions don't exist anymore. You're either giving a quarterback $100 million or somebody else will. And again, Daniel Jones isn't 29. He's not at the end of his rope. He's 25. He'll be 26 next year. I mean, he's got 10 more years left by all accounts. I mean, Daniel Jones has played his way into a huge payday. The Giants have to be careful here with how they navigate this. Yeah. So, but yeah, kudos to the Giants. They've made it farther than I thought they would. I certainly thought Dable would make them better this year. There's no way I would have predicted they made it to the divisional round of the playoffs. So, yeah, Dable deserves a lot of credit. Daniel Jones deserves a lot of credit. Team played well. And Saquon, again, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but Saquon might not be as expensive on DFS slates as he normally is. I know he's Saquon Barkley we're talking about, but that could be a situation where the platforms maybe reduce his salary a little bit just because they look at the situation and they think to themselves in a vacuum like, oh, that's a tough spot. Eagles are good. They're a talented team. This could be bad game script for Saquon. But the Eagles have a leaky run defense. Saquon's probably going to be a good bet to see all the work he can handle. And then as far as the Eagles, I mean, they feel like right now, just based on what we saw to end the season, the couple weeks leading up to the end of the season, the Eagles feel like the biggest question mark in the left in the playoffs right now. Because the last time they were firing on all cylinders was week 15, prior to Jalen Hurts getting hurt. That was a month ago. Now, everybody's healthy except for I think one guy. It's Maddox, the slot guy for the Eagles. So, on paper, you could bet on Jalen Hurts to get his. You could bet on A.J. Brown to get his, even though it's going to be a tough matchup against Adoree Jackson, who returned last week from injury. Miles Sanders, I guess you would expect to get his, again, if you play DFS contests or if you have him in playoff best ball. The Giants' run defense was also a little shaky toward the end of the season, so Sanders should also be fine from a DFS perspective. And again, if you expect the game to go the Eagles' way, I think they're 7.5-point favorites. That's a line that on the surface would favor the starting running back. They have a lead. The Eagles are a good run first offense. I think they're still, maybe they're not run first, but they're definitely they're one of the most efficient teams running the football, maybe the most efficient between Hurts and that offensive line. So Sanders should be solid in DFS lineups as well. And then, of course, there's, if you really want to get freaky with it, Boston Scott is probably the random flyer worth taking a shot on this weekend, because every time he plays the Giants, he does well. So if you're playing DFS and you've got a bunch of heavy hitters in your lineup and you're looking for a cheap guy to fill out the roster, Boston Scott, give him a look. Give him a look. Rojo, I'm also interested in Spears. He's super intriguing. I definitely like Spears. Yeah. He's interesting. I'm looking forward to looking. I'm looking forward, yeah, to looking at the all 22 on Spears. Kilo, what's going on? Good to see you, Kilo. Would I buy Daniel Jones for the 106 in Superflex? Your other quarterbacks are Rodgers and Tannehill. If you, yeah, you could. I mean, if you don't have a glaring obvious need, I would wait until the draft to pull that off. I would wait until the draft to pull it off, just in case a prospect like shoots up and lays claim to a pick in the top 6. I don't know that it's gonna be, I guess it depends. Do you the question is, I guess we're gonna have to see how this process plays out, but that might be the pick that you want to spend if you keep it. Just have the conversation. That might be the pick that you use to draft Jackson Smith and Jigba, who could be worth it. I think Smith and Jigba, he's gonna fall a little bit. It's not gonna be much, but he's probably in the conversation to go in the top 4 if he's healthy this year. And because he wasn't healthy this year, he's going to fall to the 106 in that range, I would think. So if you're stout at wide receiver, that's my first thought, Kilo. If you're stout at wide receiver, then sure. I think I would probably make that trade to get Daniel Jones. And you have good young anchors up and down your lineup at wide receiver. Yeah, I mean, you can probably, like Rojo said, I would probably, the way Daniel Jones is playing right now and the fact that it's a quarterback in super flex leagues, you might be able to ask for, I like, again, it's like John always says, it doesn't hurt to ask for that little extra. If they say no, then they say no. Ask for a second round pick in return because you're giving up a quarterback. Or excuse me, you're giving up a first round pick. Or yeah, if you have the guy who has Daniel Jones might be the one that asks for a little bit more. But at the end of the day, yeah, I would probably, because you have those wide receivers, I would probably do that trade. I would probably do that trade. Get yourself a young quarterback who's not even 26 yet. Should have another eight seasons easily. Yeah, I think I would do that trade, Kilo. Yeah, sure. I'll take a 26-year-old quarterback who it's possible has turned it around, has turned a corner. Yeah, I think I would do that. I think I would do that. Yeah. I mean, Daniel Jones has played his way into being the clear-cut starter for the Giants next year, and probably the clear-cut starter for a minimum of a couple of seasons. Like, he completely turned it around this year. And you can give Dayball credit for that as well, but you still have to go out on the field and execute and, make the throws, reduce the turnovers. He did it all. He did all of that. Yeah. He went from a guy that nobody wanted to now who's a guy who's worthy of a mid first round pick. This is probably why it makes, like, for me, CXK, like the fact that you have Trey Lance, I would do nothing with that guy except for hold. It might take a couple of seasons. It might take longer than we wanted to, but he was taken third overall. Daniel Jones was taken sixth overall. It took 4 seasons and a good coach. Lance already has that as long as he stays in San Francisco. Man. Of course, if he gets traded because they decide to go with Brock Purdy, then it's likely the coaching situation gets worse for him before it gets better. Because you are likely going downward from Shanahan. Yeah, like Jordan Love. Jordan Love played 20 snaps this year because he filled in for Aaron Rodgers on Monday Night Football and looked capable because he was able to get into Christian Watson, who's faster than everybody else, and was just able to blaze it up the sideline. Yeah. So honestly, if you can turn, if you could turn a second round pick into Trey Lance, that's dice worth rolling, as far as I'm concerned. Hell, the same conversation might be had for Jordan Love. It's probably gonna you can't ask for a first round pick, but somebody's gonna ask for a second round pick. If it's like the 2-0, if it's the 2-0, they're going to want a high second round pick because it's still a quarterback with good draft capital. Savvy people who have Trey Lance aren't going to just give him away. The perception of Trey Lance right now is different from the perception of Daniel Jones after Daniel Jones's second season ended. At the end of that season, there was no doubt you could have just handed him away. You could have given him away. Or you couldn't have, excuse me. Nobody wanted him. I think depending on who your league mates are and depending on their feelings on Trey Lance, that's probably a little different. But Jordan Love, I mean, I wouldn't give a high second, but I would dangle a late second. The thing is, now was not the time likely to try to get Jordan Love because the person who has Jordan Love is going to hold out hope that Aaron Rodgers either retires or moves to another team. The retirement is pretty much unlikely. And I'm not sure what the cap hit would be that the Packers would have to absorb if they traded him. So this is not the best time, probably, to try to buy Jordan Love. You can ask, you can look into it, but it's probably going to cost you more than you want to give up, especially given the unknown of will he actually play next year. So as far as Zach Wilson, that one is one where I guess I felt confident about Daniel Jones too, saying he's not it, but it feels like you can say Zach Wilson is not it. I don't know. I have no. The difference between Daniel Jones and Zach Wilson, I guess, is that I don't remember hearing a peep from Daniel Jones after him consistently playing poorly. It feels like Wilson is more willing to give a quote, and his most recent one about how if they sign a veteran quarterback, I'm going to make that guy's life hell. Like, to me, he's grasping at straws. He's grasping at straws, and he's talking the talk, but he's given us no reason to believe that he can walk the walk. Like, at least Daniel Jones, after a couple seasons in the league where he did not look good, at least he kept his head down and you never actually heard from him. outside of New York. But when Zach Wilson, as it pertains to Zach Wilson, it seems like he's on ESPN every other week because he's talking to the media and he's making these snide remarks that he hasn't earned the right to give. I'm going to make if they sign a veteran, I know I'm paraphrasing, but if they sign a veteran quarterback, I'm going to make that guy's life hell. Dude, no veteran quarterback is worried about Zach Wilson if they're in a quarterback competition with him. None. Zero. There are no veteran quarterbacks. If any, honestly, the veteran quarterbacks are hope that the Jets is their landing spot because that's a good team. It's a good defense. That defense is ready to win now. And there's very good pieces on offense. If they have a veteran quarterback, that team can compete. Zach Wilson's not doing anything to scare off any veteran quarterbacks. I'll tell you that. He's the one I feel the most confident in saying he's not it. Yeah. But it's difficult, right? It's still at the end of the day, it's a young quarterback with good draft capital. Um, I don't know, man. He just feels like he's a bonehead. Just feels like he's a bonehead. But good young quarterbacks who are they have the potential. They haven't reached it yet, and they're still, there's still a window where they're not too expensive to acquire. It's a savvy play. Just going back to the divisional round, I think I talked a good amount about the Chiefs game and the Eagles game, and then one from just a high level overview of the matchups, and then also like a little bit of the DFS and or best ball fantasy playoff perspective. Also talked about the Bills and the Bengals toward the top of the show. Um, that is playoff best ball palooza. Should be there's no reason to believe that shouldn't be a shootout. Allen's going to be probably the most owned quarterback. Burrow's going to be right behind him. Not going to be much less expensive on the road. Having to stay aggressive, having to throw probably all game. It's just going to be a matter of which of those wide receivers is the combo that you want in your DFS lineups. Diggs at home, probably a layup, which means if I go high end at wide receiver, I would probably pivot to Higgins over Chase if Higgins is a couple $100 cheaper than Chase because I already have Diggs. Should be a shootout. I personally kind of like the Bengals in that game. Not just to cover, but I think the Bengals might win that game outright. I don't know, man. It feels weird betting against Josh Allen, but Burrow's playing better, I would say. Burrow's playing better than Allen right now. It's not by much, but the margins are razor thin in the playoffs. I think I kind of like Cincinnati in that game in an upset. And I would take Cincinnati plus 5.5 this weekend. And then the final game, of course, is the 49ers and the Cowboys. Brock Purdy went nuclear against the Seahawks. Let's see how he does against a much better defense. Much better defense than Seattle has. It's going to be a tougher matchup for Christian McCaffrey. the, the thing is with the 49ers, they're a matchup nightmare, but the Cowboys have lots of talent all up and down their defense. So somebody there, a high profile name in that game will lay an egg. It was Kittle and Ayuk didn't do great last week despite the good matchup. It was all Debo and McCaffrey. Um, and then on the flip side, the Cowboys have to play their third straight road game. A lot of travel. 49ers have probably the best defense in the NFL. They are not going to have their way the way they did against the Bucs defense on Monday night. That game feels like a true pick 'em, but it feels hard to go against the way the 49ers are playing right now and the fact that they're at home. It feels tough to go against them. Dallas, though, they're talented. If there's a team that could go into San Francisco and steal it and win the game, and I know that the Cowboys are they're the butt of the playoff jokes and have been for a while as far as not being able to come through in big games and deliver and survive in advance. They got what, 5 playoff wins over the past 25 years. It's not a significant number. This team now has momentum. The Cowboys have momentum, and they're coming in again. They're going to be playing loose too. The pressure's going to be on the 49ers to deliver at home, having looked like one of the best teams in the league for most of the season. Now, it's a little different than, say, the Giants. The Giants are playing with house money. The Jaguars are playing with house money. Neither of these teams are happy that they're here. The Cowboys, year in and year out, expect to be here. Doesn't always play out that way. But they expect to be here, and now they're in a situation where they are, and they are an underdog on the road against an incredible team. But they have enough to go in and get it done. Should be a great game. Should be a great weekend of football. The divisional round is typically blow for blow the best weekend of the NFL season as far as a combination of games available to you throughout the weekend and the quality of opponents, quality of matchups. Last year's divisional round was probably the best weekend in football I've ever witnessed. We can only hope that this weekend somehow comes close to meeting those expectations. Should be a great weekend of football. I do think I'm going to wrap this up here shortly. Appreciate the members coming in. Appreciate everybody who did come in and contributed to the conversation. Always happy to talk shop. Always happy to take questions and shoot the shit with you guys. You already know. We'll be here all off season long, like I said earlier at the top of the show. I do have a bit more on my plate with John taking a leave of absence to work on his health, and we obviously wish him the best and hope he gets what he needs and gets taken care of sooner than later, so he can come back and continue to put out the great content that he always has put out. But I'm holding it down for now. It could be, once a week for now. Hopefully it moves to twice per week when we get to dynasty season and we really get closer to the draft. But I'm not going anywhere. But that'll do it for me for tonight. Again, you guys can continue to look out for dynasty-related videos. We've begun the 2023 way too early profiling. That'll continue, so you can be on the lookout for that. Everybody enjoy the weekend, not just football, but enjoy the weekend in general. Enjoy the games. Hopefully y'all win some money if you do any contests. And appreciate the support and hanging out as always. I will see you guys next week.